Our love grew old, but it never died. My name is Deborah, and this is not just another love story. It is the story of a wound that refused to heal, of a memory that refused to fade, and of a love that time itself could not bury. I was only a teenage girl when I first tasted the sweetness of true affection. It wasn't the kind of love that people laugh about when they remember their high school days. No, it was deeper, stronger, and almost frightening in its purity. His name was Johnson. He was my everything, the voice that steadied my trembling heart, the smile that chased away my insecurities, the boy who made the world feel less cruel. We never got to say goodbye. One day, he was there, holding my hand as though nothing could separate us, and the next day, he was gone, taken away by his parents to a faraway land. No address, no letter, no trace. Just emptiness. Just silence. That silence became my shadow for 10 long years. Through university lectures, through my graduation ceremony, through lonely birthdays and endless suitors I could not say yes to, I carried Johnson in my heart. I carried him like an unfinished sentence, like a song with its final note missing. Many told me to forget him, to move on, to marry someone else. But how do you bury something that never died? How do you close the door on a love that still knocks on your heart every single night? And then, when I least expected it, when I had stopped searching but not stopped hoping, fate played its hand. In a polished boardroom, dressed for an interview I thought would change my career, I came face to face with a man who had already changed my life forever. My Johnson. My teenage dream. My unanswered prayer. This is our story. A story of loss, of searching, of disappointments that almost broke us, and of a love that grew old, but never, ever died. When I look back now, I sometimes laugh at how naive I was, yet those were the sweetest years of my life. I was 16, just an ordinary girl in a modest high school in Lagos, when the boy who would change my heart forever walked into my world. His name was Johnson, and though he came from a quiet family, he carried himself with a charm that was hard to ignore. He wasn't the loudest boy in class. In fact, he was the opposite. He preferred sitting by the window, watching the trees sway while the teachers taught. He always seemed to be in a world of his own, and that mysterious quietness made him so different from the other boys who shouted and chased after girls in the corridors. I still remember the first day he spoke to me. It was after school hours, and I was struggling with a heavy pile of books, trying to balance them against my chest. Out of nowhere, a hand reached out and steadied them for me. I looked up and there he was, tall, slim, with kind eyes that seemed to hold stories far older than our teenage years. "You're always carrying the whole library," he said with a shy smile. I laughed nervously. I liked to read. From that day on, something unspoken began between us. We didn't call it love at first, it was too delicate for that word. We simply understood each other. When others saw just another school day, we saw a chance to walk side by side, to share a meat pie during break, to exchange glances in class that meant more than 1,000 words. There was one afternoon I'll never forget. It had rained heavily, and the school field was drenched. Most students ran to the bus stop, but Johnson and I stayed behind. We sat under the big mango tree near the back of the school, watching the raindrops fall like silver beads from the leaves. He pulled out his small notebook and read a poem he had written, about dreams, about hope, about holding on to something beautiful even if the world tried to take it away. I was stunned. How could a boy of 16 write such words? His voice was soft but steady, and as I listened, I realized I wasn't just hearing a poem, I was hearing his heart. That was the first time I felt my chest tighten with something too big to name. Love. We became inseparable after that. Though we never declared it openly, everyone in class knew we had something special. My friends teased me, and his friends nudged him, but we didn't care. To us, the world outside didn't exist. Every morning, I looked forward to seeing him at the gate, waiting with his bag slung carelessly on one shoulder. He'd smile and say, "Shall we?" as if it was a ritual, and together we would walk into school. After classes, he would carry my books to the junction where our paths separated, and before leaving, he would always say, "See you tomorrow, Debbie." Those simple words became my anchor. See you tomorrow. It was a promise I believed with all my heart. But life has a way of tearing promises apart. One Friday, after school dismissed, I noticed Johnson wasn't at the gate. I waited. Minutes stretched into an hour, but he never came. My heart sank, but I told myself maybe he had gone home early. The weekend passed, and on Monday, he was still not in class. Whispers spread, Something about his parents returning from America. I didn't understand at first, but by Wednesday, it became clear, Johnson had been taken abroad for further studies. Just like that. No goodbye. No letter. No explanation. I cannot describe the emptiness that swallowed me. It was as if someone had ripped out a part of me and left me bleeding silently where no one could see. I searched everywhere, in the library where we used to sit, under the mango tree where he read me his poem, at the school gate where he always waited. He was nowhere. I cried for nights, clutching the small notebook he once lent me. His handwriting danced across the pages, a painful reminder that he had been real, that I hadn't dreamed him up. My chest ached with questions. Did he think of me before he left? Did he try to tell me but couldn't? Would he ever come back? The hardest part was not knowing. If he had told me goodbye, maybe I would have found peace. But the silence burned like fire, and the hole in my heart grew bigger with each passing day. Everyone around me thought I would move on. They said I was young, that it was just a teenage crush, that life would bring better men my way. But deep down, I knew they were wrong. Johnson wasn't just a boy I liked in high school. He was the first person who ever made me feel seen, the first who understood the quiet parts of me no one else noticed. And so I held on. I carried him with me in every step, in every laugh, in every lonely night. Even though he was gone, Johnson had become the echo in my soul. Looking back now, I realize those were the days that shaped my entire life, the innocent love of two teenagers who thought tomorrow was guaranteed. A love so pure, so true, that even time itself could not erase it. And as I close this chapter of memory, I whisper again the words he always told me at the gate. See you tomorrow, Debbie. Little did I know that tomorrow would take 10 long years to arrive. If the first chapter of my life was sweet with innocence, the second was bitter with longing. The day Johnson disappeared, the light in my world dimmed. What followed were years filled with questions, endless searching, and an ache that refused to leave. At first, I didn't believe it. I told myself he would return. I waited at the school gate every morning for weeks, hoping to see him stroll in with his bag on one shoulder and that easy smile on his face. I searched the corridors, the library, the mango tree. We had made so many memories there. But every space where his presence used to be was now silent, empty, cold. I asked our classmates if anyone had his address. No one knew. I even approached one of his close friends and begged for information, but all he said was, "Debbie, he's gone." His parents came back from America suddenly and took him away. None of us knew it would happen so fast. That was the cruelest part, it happened so fast, like a thief stealing in the night. One moment, I was laughing with him, and the next, he was nothing but a memory. No goodbye. No chance to say the things my heart had bottled up. For weeks, I cried myself to sleep. Every night, I prayed that he would find a way to write to me, call me, anything. I imagined receiving a letter with foreign stamps, his handwriting across the page. But the mailbox stayed empty. The silence stretched into months, then years. When I gained admission into the university, my parents were overjoyed. But even in that moment of pride, my heart was heavy. I had once dreamed of celebrating such milestones with Johnson by my side. I wanted him to see me in my matriculation gown, to tease me about how serious I looked, to say those words only he could, "I'm proud of you, Debbie." But he was gone, and the university became another stage of waiting. There were suitors, of course. Too many, if I'm being honest. Boys from my department, young men from church, family friends my parents kept pushing toward me. Some were kind, some were wealthy, others were very persistent. One even wrote me poems every week, slipped under my hostel door. But every time I tried to imagine myself saying yes, Johnson's face appeared in my mind. His smile. His voice. His promise of, "See you tomorrow." And suddenly, every other man felt like an intruder in a place that already belonged to someone else. My friends didn't understand. They thought I was crazy. "Debbie, how long will you wait for a boy you don't even know where he is?" they asked. "He might be married by now. He might not even remember you." Their words hurt, but I refused to let them kill the small flame of hope inside me. I believed, no, I knew, that Johnson remembered. Our love had been too real, too deep, too unshakable for him to forget. Even if the world tried to bury it, I knew he carried me in his heart just as I carried him in mine. Still, the waiting was not easy. During quiet nights in my dorm room, when the world slept and silence pressed heavy on me, I would open his old notebook. That was the only thing I had left of him, the poems he wrote in his own hand. I read them over and over, until the pages grew soft at the edges from my tears. His words were my lifeline, proof that once upon a time, he had been here, and he had loved me. Graduation came, and I wore my gown with pride. My parents clapped, my friends cheered, but in the crowd I searched for him. Some part of me believed he would appear that day, surprising me with flowers, whispering that he had found me at last. But the crowd thinned, and once again, there was only silence. After school, I got a good job in a reputable company. My life looked perfect on the outside, a stable career, supportive family, promising future. But inside, I was empty. Every achievement felt incomplete because the one person I longed to share it with was still missing. I tried to find him. Oh, how I tried. I searched the internet, wrote messages on old alumni forums, even reached out to someone I heard had relocated abroad around the same time as Johnson. But every effort hit a wall. It was as if he had vanished from the surface of the earth. Some nights, I broke down completely. I asked God why he had allowed me to taste such love only to rip it away. I begged for a sign, a dream, a whisper, anything to show me that Johnson was still out there, still breathing, still mine. But heaven stayed silent. Years passed, and with each one, the pressure to move on grew stronger. My mother began dropping hints about marriage. My father introduced me to respectable young men. Colleagues teased me about being too picky. But how could I explain to them that my heart was not free? That it was still chained to a boy who had vanished a decade ago? I carried Johnson like a ghost. He haunted my smiles, my laughter, my quiet moments. Even when I tried to date someone else, I felt guilty, like I was betraying him. It was easier to stay alone than to pretend I could love another. And yet, through all the pain, the disappointments, the fruitless searches, one truth never changed. I never stopped believing. I believed that one day, somehow, fate would return him to me. And when that day came, I would not let him go again. I didn't know it then, but fate was already weaving its plan. It would take 10 long years, countless tears, and a twist I could never have imagined. But destiny, as I would soon learn, never abandons a love that refuses to die. By the time I settled into my career, people thought I had everything figured out. I was in my mid-20s, working in one of the most respected firms in the city, earning enough to support myself and even help my family. My colleagues admired me, my parents boasted about me, and my friends envied how put together my life seemed. But if you peeled back the polished layers, you would see a different truth. I was a woman haunted by a ghost. That ghost's name was Johnson. He was no longer a boy in my memories. Time had aged him in my mind. Sometimes I pictured him as a young man in a suit, working in some corporate office abroad, other times as a scholar buried in books at a foreign university. Yet no matter how I imagined him, his eyes were always the same, warm, deep, and full of that gentle promise he once carried when he said, "See you tomorrow, Debbie." Everywhere I went, his presence followed me. On my way to work, when I saw couples holding hands on the street, I thought of him. When colleagues talked about their relationships, engagements, and weddings, I smiled politely, but inside, I bled. In every laugh, in every silence, Johnson lived. There was one evening I will never forget. It was after a long day at the office. I came home exhausted, dropped my bag on the sofa, and switched on the TV. A romantic film was playing. The couple on screen reminded me so much of us, two young people who believed love could conquer anything. My chest tightened, and before I knew it, I was crying uncontrollably, whispering his name into the empty room. "Johnson, where are you? Why didn't you come back for me?" I wiped my tears, ashamed of myself. 10 years had passed, and still, I was living as though he had left yesterday. My heart was a prisoner of memories that refused to die. Suitors came and went, as always. Some were sincere, others were proud, but all of them were wrong. I tried once, I really tried, to give one a chance. His name was David, a tall, charming colleague who had been pursuing me for months. He was thoughtful, even wrote me letters the old-fashioned way. My parents approved of him, and my friends kept saying, "Debbie, stop waiting for a shadow. Give your future a chance." So I tried. I went on a dinner date with David. He took me to a fine restaurant, spoke passionately about his dreams, even reached across the table to hold my hand. But the moment his fingers touched mine, I froze. I didn't feel warmth. I didn't feel safety. All I felt was emptiness, because it wasn't Johnson's hand. It wasn't the boy who steadied my books in high school, who read me poems under the mango tree. That night, I went home and ended things with David. He didn't understand. "Debbie, what exactly are you waiting for?" he asked, frustration in his eyes. I didn't answer. How could I explain that I was waiting for someone who might never return? Someone who had become both my blessing and my curse? People began calling me picky. Some said I was proud, others whispered that I was cursed. I smiled through it all, but deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't rejecting men because they weren't good enough. I was rejecting them because my heart was already taken, chained to a love that had refused to die. I remember one quiet Sunday after church. I sat alone in my room, staring at the old notebook Johnson had once given me. The pages were fragile now, yellowed with age, but his handwriting was still there, sharp, alive, eternal. I traced the letters with my finger, as if touching the ink would somehow touch him. A tear slipped down my cheek, and I whispered, "If you're still out there, Johnson, I'm still here. Still waiting." My faith in destiny was the only thing that kept me sane. I told myself over and over again, if our love was real, fate would bring us back together. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And yet, as the years rolled by, even hope began to feel like a heavy burden. My friends married one after another. They wore white dresses, walked down aisles, and posted their honeymoon pictures online. I celebrated with them, smiled for their cameras, but each celebration stabbed me in the heart. I kept wondering, would it ever be my turn? Would I ever stand at an altar, staring into the eyes of the man I had always dreamed of? Or had fate played a cruel joke on me, allowing me to taste true love only to snatch it away forever? Still, through all the doubt, I couldn't let go. Every night, before I slept, I prayed one last prayer. God, if Johnson is still alive, bring him back to me. Please. I didn't know when, or how, or if it would ever happen. But in the deepest part of my soul, I believed one thing with all my heart. Our love had grown old, but it had not died. And soon, though I didn't yet know it, destiny was preparing the strangest, most mysterious reunion I could have ever imagined. It was a Tuesday morning I thought would be like any other. I had ironed my best navy blue suit the night before, polished my black shoes until they shone, and rehearsed my answers in front of the mirror. The opportunity before me was rare, a managerial position at a brand new international company setting up its headquarters in Lagos. It was the kind of job people prayed for, a chance to climb higher, to prove myself, to finally step into the next chapter of my career. But what I didn't know was that this interview would open the next chapter of my life instead. The office building was tall, glassy, and intimidating. As I stepped into the lobby, my palms were damp with nerves. I clutched my file tightly and whispered a prayer under my breath, "Lord, let today be the beginning of something new." I didn't know how true those words would become. The secretary led me into a polished boardroom. Around the long mahogany table sat 3 panelists, all dressed in sharp suits. I bowed politely and took my seat, trying to steady my breathing. My eyes scanned the room, until they landed on him. My heart stopped. At the head of the table sat a man I knew better than my own reflection. Older, taller, broader, but unmistakable. His jawline was sharper now, his shoulders stronger, his suit perfectly tailored. But his eyes, oh, those eyes. They were the same ones that had once searched for mine across crowded classrooms, the same eyes that had read me poems under a mango tree. Johnson. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I blinked, once, twice, 3 times. But he didn't vanish. He was real. Flesh and blood. Sitting just a few feet away, looking at me with an expression that mirrored my own, shock, disbelief, and something deeper. "Miss Deborah," one of the panelists began, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. "Please tell us about your background and why you believe you're fit for this role." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My throat was dry, my chest tight. All I could do was stare. And then, slowly, Johnson spoke. His voice was deeper now, more commanding, but it still carried that gentle undertone I remembered. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving mine, "I think we need a moment." The other panelists looked at him in confusion, but he cleared his throat and continued firmly. "Please excuse us. I'll handle this interview personally." There was a pause, then reluctant nods. Chairs shuffled, files closed, and within moments, the boardroom was empty, except for the two of us. Silence. Heavy, charged, overwhelming silence. I clutched my file against my chest, my hands trembling. My lips parted, but the first thing that escaped was a sob. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Johnson, I whispered, the name tasting strange after so many years. He rose from his chair slowly, like a man waking from a long dream. His eyes glistened, his jaw trembled. Then he crossed the room in 3 quick strides and stopped in front of me. "Debbie," he breathed, his voice breaking. "Is it really you?" And before I knew it, his arms were around me. I buried my face in his chest, the scent of him flooding back memories I had carried like ghosts for 10 long years. I wept, not from sadness but from the sheer weight of relief. He held me tightly, as though afraid I would vanish again. "I searched for you," I cried into his suit. "All these years, Johnson, I searched for you. I never stopped." His grip tightened. "And I searched for you, Debbie. God knows I did. I went back to our old school the summer after I left, but you were gone. I wrote letters, tried to find your family, but everything led to dead ends. It was like the world didn't want us to meet again." I pulled back, staring at his face through blurred tears. "And all this time, I thought you forgot me. I thought you moved on." His voice trembled as he cupped my cheek. "Forget you? Debbie, I built an empire, I traveled the world, I shook hands with powerful men, but not a single day passed that I didn't think of you. Every success felt empty because you weren't there to share it with me." My tears spilled freely now, falling onto his hands. "Johnson." He smiled through his own tears, shaking his head in wonder. 10 years, Debbie. 10 wasted years. And yet, it feels like yesterday when I told you, "See you tomorrow." We laughed then, even as we cried, laughing at the cruel joke fate had played on us, laughing at the absurdity of meeting again in a corporate boardroom. For the first time in a decade, the ache in my heart eased. The ghost that had haunted me vanished, replaced by the man standing before me. My Johnson. My tomorrow. That day, the interview ended before it began. But something greater started, a reunion we had both prayed for in silence, a love that had grown old but refused to die. The day I stepped into the glass-walled lobby of Regal Global Enterprises, my heels clicking nervously against the polished floor, I had no idea destiny was waiting for me on the other side. For weeks, I had prepared for this interview. It wasn't just another job opportunity, it was the kind of position that could shift my career from middle management into true leadership. A managerial role in a prestigious international firm setting up operations in Nigeria, it was a dream come true. Still, my heart wasn't fully there. In the quiet corners of my soul, Johnson's memory remained, like a song stuck on repeat. 10 years had passed, but my love for him had never aged, never dimmed. My colleagues often teased me about my single life, but what they didn't know was that every suitor's face I encountered always blurred into his. Every laugh, every smile, every touch seemed shallow compared to what I once knew with him. As I signed in at the reception, I whispered a prayer. "Lord, let this door open for me." The young receptionist smiled warmly. "Miss Deborah, please proceed to the 12th floor. The CEO himself is conducting the final interviews." I froze. The CEO himself? That was unusual. For such a giant firm, it was rare for the head to personally meet candidates. The elevator ride felt endless. My palms sweated despite the cool air conditioning. When the door opened, I was ushered into a spacious boardroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. And then, my world stopped. Sitting at the head of the table, in a perfectly tailored navy suit, was Johnson. For a second, I thought my mind was playing tricks. My breath hitched, my knees wobbled. His face was older, sharper, more defined, but unmistakably him. Those eyes, the same deep brown that once looked at me across a classroom desk. That smile, though more reserved now, still carried the warmth that once melted my heart. "Miss Deborah," he said, his voice deeper, richer, but achingly familiar. "Please, have a seat." I stumbled forward, every nerve screaming. Did he recognize me? Did he remember? Or had I been erased from his world like chalk washed off a board? I sat, gripping my resume tightly. My voice trembled as I answered his formal questions, but my heart was pounding louder than any response I gave. I dared not break the interview flow by blurting out his name. What if he didn't remember me? What if his life had moved so far ahead that I was just a faded footnote? But then, as the panelists excused themselves for a moment, leaving just the two of us in the room, his facade cracked. "Deborah!" His voice broke. His eyes widened, disbelieving. "It's you." The resume slipped from my hands. Tears instantly blurred my vision. "Johnson." My whisper trembled like a confession. In the next breath, the years melted. We were no longer adults in a glass tower. We were teenagers again, clutching hands under the schoolyard tree. "I searched for you everywhere," he said, his voice breaking, the CEO mask slipping away to reveal the boy I once knew. "I begged my parents for your address, but they never knew about us. I went back to school after summer, hoping to see you, but you were gone. I wrote letters," I choked, tears spilling freely. "I went to your old house, I asked friends, nothing. You vanished without a trace. Johnson, I thought I lost you forever." He stood abruptly, circled the table, and pulled me into his arms. For a moment, the professional world disappeared. There, in that office, two souls reunited. The kind of embrace that stitches together a decade of heartbreak. 10 years, he whispered into my hair. 10 years of searching, of hoping, of holding on to the memory of you. 10 years of saying no to everyone because no one could ever be you, I sobbed. When we finally pulled apart, his hands lingered on my face, as if confirming I was real. This company, this role, none of it matters as much as this moment. I found you again. And right there, in a boardroom meant for contracts and negotiations, fate signed the greatest deal of my life. But I knew the story wasn't done. There were confessions to make, wounds to reopen, and tears yet to be shed. We had both searched in vain for years, both lived with heartbreak. We owed each other the truth. As the door opened and the other executives walked back in, Johnson squeezed my hand under the table. For now, we would finish the formalities. But in our hearts, one thing was clear. The boardroom was silent, yet my heart thundered like a drum. Johnson stood before me, not just as the CEO of a multinational company, but as the boy I once loved, the boy I never stopped loving. 10 years had melted away in a second, leaving only raw emotions, unshed tears, and memories that refused to die. "Deborah," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Is this real? Am I really standing before you?" I wanted to speak, but my lips trembled. Instead, my eyes spoke for me, pouring out all the pain, the longing, the sleepless nights I had carried for a decade. "Yes, Johnson," I finally said, my voice quivering. "It's me. And it's you. After all these years." He took a shaky step forward. "I searched for you everywhere. I begged my parents for your school's address, your contact, anything. But they were in a hurry. They thought I was too young to be tied down to anyone. They wanted me to focus on my studies. And I lost you." The tears that had been dammed in my eyes spilled freely. "Do you know how many nights I cried, Johnson? Do you know how many times I wrote letters I could never send, or stood at our old school gate, praying for a miracle? I loved you. I never stopped loving you. But you vanished." "I didn't vanish, Deborah," he said, his voice thick. "I was caged. And when I finally became a man, when I could stand on my own, I tried to trace you. But Nigeria had moved on, numbers had changed, and every path I followed ended in emptiness. I thought I had lost you forever." He reached for my hand then, those same hands he once held as a boy when we walked down the dusty path from school. The touch ignited something deep inside me. "Do you still love me, Deborah?" he asked, his eyes piercing into my soul. My answer came with no hesitation. I never stopped. I turned down suitors because none of them could give me what you gave me. My heart, it always waited for you. The room seemed to blur as Johnson pulled me into his arms. For the first time in 10 years, I felt whole again. We clung to each other like drowning souls finally reaching the shore. "I built this company," Johnson whispered against my hair, "not just to fulfill my dreams, but to come back home. To come back to you. And now that I've found you, I'll never let you go again." I sobbed against his chest, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being found. We sat together after the meeting, forgetting the board members, the formalities, the titles. For us, the world had shrunk into just two hearts reunited. That evening, Johnson drove me to the old high school where our love began. The classrooms were still there, though weathered by time. He walked me to the tree where we once carved our initials. To my shock, the marks were still faintly visible, J plus D. "I used to dream of this day," I whispered, tracing the letters with my fingers. "And now it's real," Johnson replied, holding me close. "Our love grew old, Deborah, but it never died. It only waited for its time." The days that followed were filled with endless conversations, sharing stories of our struggles, the letters never sent, the prayers never answered until now. We cried, we laughed, we healed. Months later, at a small and intimate wedding, we vowed before God and men never to lose each other again. Tears flowed freely, not of sorrow, but of joy, gratitude, and the beauty of a love that endured the test of time. As I looked into Johnson's eyes that day, I knew that destiny had finally kept its promise. Our love had grown old, but it had never, ever died. And to you, dear reader, if you have ever loved and lost, let Deborah and Johnson's story remind you that true love does not fade with time. It may bend, it may break your heart, but if it's meant for you, it will always find its way back. Never give up on love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the story so more hearts can feel the warmth of Deborah and Johnson's love.